Welcome to another episode of the AlbumReview.net podcast. I'm Greg Potters. Thanks to all you listeners out there for your interaction and feedback. Your feedback is much appreciated and it helps me to always improve. On today's episode, I bring you a conversation, album review, and the music of Shayan Regan. Shayan hails from the UK and currently lives in Florence, Italy. Shayan joins me as I review his debut album, A Poison With An Aftertaste. All right, so first, a little bit of housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
No, thank you. Sleeping.
Housekeeping?
Come back in an hour.
Housekeeping, you want towels?
No towels. Need sleepy.
Housekeeping, you want me for pillow?
You can read my reviews and listen to any of my podcast episodes by going to AlbumReview.net. These episodes can also be heard wherever podcasts are available. Please follow my podcast on your preferred platform so you can get regular updates on new episodes. Also, if you guys would be so kind as to pop a quick review or rate the podcast, that helps move the needle and get the word out there. In addition to listening, you can read over 40 written reviews at AlbumReview.net and pick up some merchandise from your favorite bands such as trucker hats, t-shirts, several of your favorite albums. I've got home sound systems, and as I mentioned before, the bookstore. Want to learn more about your favorite musician or band that you can't find on the internet? Go to AlbumReview.net and click the store tab where you can grab a copy of different biographies and autobiographies from artists such as Tom Petty, Guns N' Roses, Rush, Pink Floyd, Faith No More, Aerosmith. You can find the story of Spotify called the Spotify Play. Also, my favorite book of all time, The 4-Hour Workweek, is on there. At the bookstore, you'll have access to titles written by authors I've also had on the podcast, such as the story of Ivan Bodley, titled Am I Famous Yet? Memoir of a Working Class Rock Star. Ivan was on episode 20 of the podcast. I also interviewed Kyle Hegarty on a previous episode, and Kyle's book, The Accidental Business Nomad, is available in the store. In his book, Kyle teaches you how to successfully work across different business cultures, explaining what is socially and professionally acceptable in some cultures and what is not in others. I also have author Brian O'Connor's 2 books, Time Decorated and For the Record. I've got it all there, so go check it out, the bookstore at AlbumReview.net. All right, strap in. You are in for a special, special treat, guys. Shayan's music is extraordinary. Here's my interview and album review of Shayan Regan's A Poison With An Aftertaste. Shayan, I'm delighted to have you with us here today, man. Shayan hails from the UK, but he's currently living in Italy. And he's here to talk to me about a ton of stuff, including his debut album, A Poison With An Aftertaste, released in November of 2021, which is now out on Bandcamp, Spotify, and several other platforms where you can get your music. Shayan also released a deluxe edition of A Poison With An Aftertaste in March of 2022, just last month. And that has additional tracks on it, which we'll also get into. Shayan, thanks so much for being on the AlbumReview.net podcast with me today, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so glad to do this, and I'm very, very excited. And it's just a great feeling all around. Just having to sit down here and talk about the album. I'm completely just all over the moon.
To start, I was reading one of your bios on the internet, and if much of it is true, you've got a really mature taste in music, man. I wanted to point that out right away. I found, at least here in the US, many folks in their early 20s are not listening to Joni Mitchell, Damien Rice, Fleetwood Mac. Tell me more about the impetus behind all these influences.
I think from the very beginning, when I was a child, my parents are big fans of classic rock, and my mom being just one of the biggest fans I know of Stevie Nicks in general. And so I think my taste for rock music and classic rock, like, you know, the generic rock and roll type, if you will, comes from naturally just from what I was, you know, what I'd been played when I was a child, like when they'd play in the house and stuff. And then when it comes to people like Damien Rice or Joni Mitchell, Leonard Cohen, etc., etc., I think those people really, I connected to them from more from their lyrics. If you
Sure.
to put that sort of up front, I think the music comes for me after the words and the lyricism and the storytelling and the way, you know, they can connect with you so deeply by just talking about their own experiences, and you just sit there and it just kind of feels like, oh yeah, that's me in like almost every way. So I think those necessarily came through by my own sort of discovery of music, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of rock and roll, exactly. Like you mentioned, like Fleetwood Mac, Elton John, Queen. I all of that just came from what I listened to growing up because of my mum and dad, because they're like big music heads, and I think that's pretty much how it came along to be, really.
Yeah, now I remembered something. Happy belated birthday, man. You turned 22
Thank you.
last month, right?
Thank you very much. Yeah, on the
Yeah.
day I released the deluxe edition. Yeah.
That's awesome. The 11th?
Yeah, March the
Yeah.
11th.
That's great. That's great. Happy birthday.
Thank
Did you
you.
do anything fun? I guess the
Well,
release is kind of fun.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but I think compared to generally just a very paranoid person I am, and with everything else going on in the world, I think didn't go as much as I would have like say 3 years ago before the pandemic on my
Right.
birthdays. So I just had a tiny little celebration with people who are close to me,
Awesome.
and just, you know, it was my first birthday away from home as well, since I just moved to Italy, and it was fun, kind of bittersweet, kind of a mix of a little bit of everything, really.
For the listeners, Shan reached out to me and shared his new album. And I definitely think there's some serious talent here, which is why I wanted to get him on the podcast and talk about his
Thank you
album.
so much, Greg.
And I mean it. In addition to that, I want to find out a little bit more about what makes you tick. So let's do a deep dive here. What part of the UK did you grow up in, Shan? If you did grow up in the UK, I think you mentioned that.
I did grow up in the UK. Yes, I was born in a place called Doncaster, but we moved from there when I was 4. I have lived in parts of America for a while, and I've just the most I've lived in London, and recently we were living in a place called Hertfordshire, just outside of London, and then from where we moved here to Florence, but where I moved out basically to Florence after I got married. So
How long have you been married?
it's gonna be in this September. It's gonna be the 3rd year.
Nice. Sounds great. Now, a question I like to
Thank you.
ask every musician on the show. Did you find that frequently you'd be listening to music to like escape something or maybe someone?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, even now, or even not just like music in general. I think I've always sort of viewed, you know, I mean, then going further into music, there's songwriting. When you come into, you know, writing songs and stuff, surely that there's that whole angle of it being therapeutic and it being an outlet. But music itself, I think all my life has been like very, very evocative, or like a companion at times, you know, when there are times when you don't want to have sort of like, say, a human interaction for like a brief period of time in a day or something. Like you just want to have like an hour to yourself, or want to have like 30 minutes to yourself, or when you want to be with people but you can't be with people, then there's, you know, you have music. I think apart from, I read a lot, so I think it's apart from like reading, if there's anything that sort of just have, you know, that has that grasp on you where you just can look for a companion in something, I think that's very much music for me. It has been as well.
You reading mostly fiction or nonfiction or both?
I kind of read whatever like appeals to me in the moment, if you will. I do like to read a lot of poets. Like I mean, I love reading Bukowski. I love reading Kurt Vonnegut. Some of my favorites, you know, and Murakami is one of my favorite, like just all-time favorites, I think. So both are like fiction, necessarily a bit more, but I do find myself, reading memoirs, or if I would have to like point out something, is that Rob Sheffield book, sort of like the Love Is a Mixtape. It's called. It's about, he wrote about his wife. I think one of the most beautiful books I've ever read in my life.
I asked the escape question because as secure and supportive as my childhood was, Shan, I definitely experienced some trauma, and I would repeatedly look to music as an escape, and music really became the one thing that could never let me down. It was really my rock, my
Isn't that
stone.
beautiful?
Yeah. So, okay, let's be honest. Your album, A Poison With An Aftertaste, it's got some pain in it. Real pain.
Yeah.
I can feel it when I listen, and I like that. I like that, Shan. Hell, for many times I've been guilty of writer's block when I've been happy for a consistent amount of time. And as a songwriter myself, I found a lot of times I would write songs about loss, whether it would be loss of a friend, a loss of a relationship, a lost love. And that's what really kind of came out when I expressed myself. With some of your songs like Wound and I Guess I Don't Love You, Blood Runs, and Scene of the Crime, I'm wondering if you could tell me or maybe let us into your world as to what inspires you to write songs like this with these heavy titles and subject matter.
I think necessarily for this album, or the track list that sort of just became this album, like, you start writing a couple songs and you start connecting them, and then it just sort of like, it becomes a collection of songs that you feel, I think, satisfied enough, I guess, to call an album. This was initially like a plot of a story that I wanted to write, since, like I said, I love reading, and I wanted to dabble into, like, maybe if I could do something like that. And I had this plot of you can't even call it like a proper plot yet. It's like, you have ideas, you have different notions and things you want to put into something. And I had this about a story, and I did decide to sort of go into it. And I think about, you could say 20-25%, and I was like, these need to be songs for me, because I partly you asked inspiration. I think partly it comes from self-experience, or someone very, very, very close to you, and you chat with them, because we talk with friends and stuff, and friends open up. I think that's the best way to befriend someone as well. It's like, you just got to open up to this person, and I think that's the best way to start a friendship anyway. And so you talk to people, and you talk to your closest friends, and they tell you they go through stuff. We all go through stuff. And I think for me, instead of taking the whole thing, the best way to explain it, that I took sort of fragments from that experience that I'd heard about, or I'd read about, or I'd gone through myself, and then just got into writing the story and all. And then halfway, a quarter way through, I was like, I need to kind of maybe try writing a song to it, because I found myself second guessing, thinking, because I can't detail it enough for it to be a story. I think I lack that skill. That's why that's why I got thinking and all. And I just thought that maybe I need to kind of do something else with it. And then I got into writing these songs and stuff, and which it became like it, because now all the regular edition, there are 10 songs, they're all connected to each other. And I think in a couple sentences, if I were to put the record, I'd just say it's a story told in fragments. And then all of these fragments, they don't connect to each other directly, but if you put them in a straight line, you can sort of see that it's like, you kind of like, you kind of like just look from a far away kind of thing, like from a further perspective, and you can see what it's spelling out, but not necessarily, if that makes sense. So it's like the stories there, but not entirely there. Still not entirely there, even after the deluxe edition, because that was kind of like the initial notion of say taking the whole story and like picking out fragments from it, and then just giving those hints and those fragments of that story to people. but in this case, it was just the fragments. I still don't haven't completed in the sense of like a proper story I haven't written, I haven't completed. In my head, maybe it's done. Do you know what I mean? Like if I sit down and I think about it, maybe it's done, maybe it's there. I just don't know if it is yet. So I think inspirationally, that's what drives me to like write music. I love writing songs for, like I said, it's very therapeutic to me. It's very like a thing I put close to my heart. But when it comes to inspiration, it can come from, you know, say you and I are having a chat and you tell me about someone else, you know, like, hey, a friend of mine went through this. Maybe that kind of comes through in my head when I'm sitting down and stuff like that. Or maybe it's something, and then I just kind of like to coat it in some sort of fiction. Because I personally feel like it's too naked for me to just, if I were to just put it out as it is. So like most of what you hear on the album is very, very, very true and very, very real, but it's just all like coated in like a thick coat of fiction to where it's like characterized, or it's like, you know, there's a story behind it, there's a plot behind it, which might or might not be my own, or, you know, could just exist in my head, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I think that gives the listener an opportunity as well to maybe relate their own experiences with also, you know, with also keeping in mind that, hey, maybe this is something important to him. Were you thinking kind of like concept album when you were putting all this together, or is that a little bit too complex?
I mean, you could say that, but it's kind of like, let's call it a concept album that has got ADHD. If that makes sense. Yeah. You know, it's got a very short attention span, so it can't fully tell you what it's trying to tell. But it's a concept record with ADHD.
Your stock just went up in my mind. That's awesome. I want to dig into the songs in a minute. Which, by the way, you just released. You know, you mentioned it. You just released a deluxe edition on March 11th with 8 additional bonus tracks. But before doing that, you mentioned to me, Shayan, in a previous conversation that you recorded this whole album on your phone, on your mobile phone, using BandLab.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Now, for those of you who've never heard of BandLab, like me, I was floored by the sound quality of Shayan's album. So BandLab is, my understanding, BandLab is, it's 100% free to use, no subscription fees, paywalls, or limits. A lot of times I go online and I download an app or I sign up for something and then I find out that what I really want to do, I have to pay for. But you're saying, or I was looking into it, it looks like all you have to do is just download the BandLab app and then you can start making music immediately.
Exactly. It came as a blessing. I'm not going to lie. I only found out about it, I believe in 2020. Yeah. Wow. October of 2020, I found out about it. And, it's a blessing. It's just sort of like, it's kind of like everything. I think I wanted to, if you will, go against the grain of that there's that notion of like, you have to have the proper tools, you have to have sort of, you know, proper gear and like a studio and a producer and the right amount of this and that, and to you know, here and there, to just make music for starters. And then there's the whole, you know, scale of, is it going to be good? Is it going to be adequate? Is it going to be, you know, are people going to like it? That all comes after. You start off with just the notion of, you know, here's a checklist of what you need. You need soundproofing, you need proper gear, you need a microphone, you need a producer, you need a studio. I think I just wanted to sort of, when I found out about it as well, like I did, you know, because I think, well, before this, there's an app called Smule. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No. It's
a karaoke app on just your phone. And that's where I just got onto, like, you know, you sing karaoke with people. You can, you know, if you want to, you can try and write songs and all that kind of stuff. So I'd been writing songs. I had these in my head. I had the story in my head slowly building. Like I say, like this whole record initially got done in 3 years. But it just, you know, kind of started being a thing after I discovered BandLab. I'm sorry, completely blanked out there. And it was really, like I said, like just so free to just, you know, like there's a lot of freedom in there. And it's like a proper audio workstation on your phone, and you can also do it on your computer and stuff. Like you can access it on the web and everything.
Right.
But I think for me, it really felt too comfortable, because there's the initial whole like you have to sit in front of a mixing board, or you have to sit still
Right.
in a single space with your headset to just get your music. I could be chilling on the couch, because what I did is I recorded the whole thing on my phone using the same headphones I'm using right now, the ones that you get with your phone.
Yeah.
And so I could have just, when it comes to the whole quote mix and master and all that like technical aspect, I could be anywhere. I could be on the train doing it. I could be in my bed doing it, because it's just on the comfort of my own phone. And I think I found that extremely sort of like just too breathable an environment to create music. I think then you can only like freely focus on what you want to make instead of how you are going to make it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. For some of the listeners, wait till you hear the sound quality. It's just I'm gonna play a bunch of examples on this podcast, but just it's really incredible. So break it down a little bit more if you don't mind. You just you hook up a mic to your phone and just hit record. Run through the instrument setup with me if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, what I did. Instruments like there's piano being played, there's strings being played, there's guitar being played, like majorly acoustic record. But I'm not too good with the piano. I'm not too good with string. Oh, strings are arranged strings, like what are those called, like MIDI strings. There are like a couple of tracks with MIDI strings on there.
Yep.
And then there's the guitar and there's the piano. I think I'm not too well with the piano, so my friends played it for me. But it's basically how you record. So how I recorded most of, like, say, an instrument or my vocals is you just plug in your phone. If you want to, like DIY soundproof a space in your room or get in your closet and stuff, do all of that. Just sort of stick your mic in front of you and get to it, I guess.
Bathroom. Have you ever done that? I remember when I was in a band, we used to record our vocals in the bathroom, just the acoustics in there. And it I
wrote a
weird.
Song in my bathroom. And
it sounds ridiculous, but it works. I found the acoustics to be incredible.
I mean, it gave me an idea to. That's actually, I mean, that's not even out or anything. That's not even like too long ago. Anyway, that happened a week and a half ago, where I kind of wrote out a whole song in my bathroom, and that gave me an idea of, I like how it sounds. Maybe I want to incorporate this in the actual thing as well, because it's got this weird sound to it. There's like a very confined sort of acoustic outlet, especially with your headphone mic or just your phone's mic. And I think because these are not initially made, I guess, to record professional music, and I think that just gives it that edge of I guess it just becomes organic. I guess that's majorly one of the things that I wanted to have on the record as well, which is why now on the deluxe edition there's just one song that's like a proper produced track with there's drums and all that kind of stuff, but majorly it's very, very acoustic, right? Because I just wanted that organic feel of then again, to put it in a situational thing, I think it would just be like a guy just recording songs in a sunroom kind of thing, or just like a guy in a living room with a guitar singing to you kind of vibe, if that makes sense.
It does.
That's what I wanted the listening experience to be, I guess.
Yeah. And you were saying earlier that it took you roughly about 3 years to put it all together. Like, was that 3 years to write and record, or just 3 years to kind of record and mix and all that?
I think the recording process of it all, I took around maybe 2 months. Okay. That also majorly being because, like I said, ADHD, so that I have the attention span of a toddler.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I'm just I start on something and in about 40 minutes, that's on a good day. And I'm like, you know what, maybe later. Let's do something. There's something new on Netflix.
It's like a toddler. It's like a toddler. Yeah. I was heavily medicated for that for years too, by the way. So I know exactly what you mean.
No, mate, it's just it gets really on your nerves sometimes. You're like, maybe let's just focus on one thing for a day. No, got to do 7 at once. So I think the recording thing just took about 2 months, including having people record stuff for me, and then getting it back, and then there's changes I want to be, because what initially would go into creating stuff would go I'd hum to people, right? Because, like I said, I'm not too good with instruments. So, a friend of mine who played like a piano line on the ninth track on the song, which is Maybe, which is with Anna.
Yep. I wanted to ask you about that
And
later, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, it's just there's a piano line on there that's played by a friend of mine, and she just goes, what do you want played? And I literally just went like, something like dun, 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 dun. That's how
Right.
I'm just humming it to her.
Yeah.
And then she just sends me back a line. I'm like, yeah, maybe improve this, change here and there. So all of that included, I think it took around nearly like maybe a bit over 2 months. I'm not too sure on it, but I think what took 3 years was the whole, not just the writing process, because I think the thinking process, that's another thing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
there's the whole writing phase, but before that comes that forming that sort of mentality or that sort of situation in your head around you that will get you into writing this record. And I think that took the longest time, because I wanted definitely to do like make songs out of these things that I'm writing, like these thoughts that I'm writing as a story.
Right.
But then at the same time, I just want, like, I never went and going, I want this particular thing to hit hard, but I just wanted it to just explain to you without detailing everything, that how sort of I mean how important this thing or this situation or this song is in the life of, quote, the protagonist of this story.
Right.
So I guess that's the thought process of it took the longest in the beginning, like the initial, what do I want to do with this?
Right.
Took the longest, and then came the writing and then the recording.
Yeah, when I write songs, many times it's spur of the moment, which, meaning like an idea comes to me and I immediately go and write it down or grab my guitar, to not to date myself, but I used to walk around with a dictaphone before, cell phones were really around. So I would carry that thing in my bag and I would just pull it out on the train or pull it out when I was walking around the city and just start humming into it. And then get home and grab
I just
my
find
guitar.
that so cool. Like, I guess, I mean, there's the whole thing with, I could just pull my phone out and I can record it. That's so basic. There's no.
It was pretty basic, man.
It
It was pretty basic. I had a lot of these little mini tapes laying around my apartment. So, but
I mean, it isn't now. Now it's like just so vintage. And I think, I mean, then again, not to date you myself.
No, it's
but it's
okay.
just, I think, I find it's the coolest thing to me, because now it just feels so everyday, if that makes sense. Like, I just pull my phone out. But when there's a whole tape or that set of tapes just like solely dedicated to this thing that you're writing, now in my phone there's other things too, at the same time I've got notes of me recording a song, and there's puppies, so there's everything.
It's your grocery list and a song that you wrote, and then a reminder
exactly.
to go walk the dog, and another song that you wrote. And so it's it is. I think
there's no special dedication.
There's no special dedication. We've definitely
your
lost
art.
We've definitely lost some of those old things. And my kids, I think they always wonder how we survived without the internet or without cell phones. And I'll tell you, we survived pretty well. But a lot of what I've said over and over again in my podcasts are, I'm not knocking any of the technology, because we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now without it. We wouldn't have been able to connect. And so, I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea, but there are days where I do kind of miss the, I think mainly because, and I love this because I think I definitely can relate to a lot more. We both have ADD. The internet is the worst nightmare for someone with ADD. I sit down and write a review, and then the next thing I know, I'm looking up belts on Amazon, and I'm like, I need a new belt, and it's like,
this can wait.
right. It's just, and you can see yourself. It's like I can hover over myself and I can see myself doing that. But I
think you derail so fast when you have ADD and you have access to the internet. I think it's a matter of seconds for you going from, like, say, for example, like a Zoom meeting to just doing crossword on the internet. I think it goes so quick.
Yeah.
It goes so quick.
It's definitely hard for me to sit down and commit to writing. And that's a lot of times I'll get writer's block. And this many times is, you know, it's not always the recipe for success or longevity, because you're always waiting for the mood, or I'm always waiting for the mood to strike me, which could be, you know, could be every day, or it could be once every 6 months. So you kind of already broke down your writing process for me. And I have to say, you know, I think you're doing the right thing. You're owning, you know, some of your opportunities and your challenges, and you're not trying to fight them too hard. But you're doing your best. I think that's the best way. Some of the mistakes I made early on was, you know, I let myself get down on them, and I really tried to fight those things. And look, there's always room for improvement, right? But
yeah, for sure.
What were you going to say? Sorry.
I think of how I take a writer's block is because then again I get very analytical with things, I guess. So how I deal with a writer's block, or like in general, what I think of a writer's block is that, you know, say I can't write something, I try and push. You know, there's the whole notion of like, oh, you know, you just got to sit down and, like, you know, just kind of press it hard and push out of it, and you'll be fine. I think you could do that. You know, you spend, if you normally write a song and it comes out in a half an hour, you spend 2 on it, and you've written a song now. Right. One, you've taken an hour and a half more than your normal speed, you know, in that particular session. And then you're bound to, in about maybe less than a week, look back at it and be like, why did I do that? Like, right. I don't like that at all. And then it's not my best. Then you excuse yourself. I think that's the biggest problem we have as people. And I'm an equal culprit. Like, I'm not, you know, putting myself out of it. I do it too. Sure. But I do realize that we all do it. Is that when things don't work out, we start blaming other things. Like, we start excusing ourselves. Oh, you know, it was the traffic. That's why I was late. No, you could have woken up 5 minutes earlier. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's kind of like once it goes down, or once it goes sideways, we try and like pick and place, which is a good coping mechanism at times, surely. Like, you know, if it gets you by, it gets you by, but surely not the most healthiest way to cope or to deal. Because I can, you know, oh, why did I write this song? I don't like this song, this, that. So I think, and also I have this, my granddad taught me this when I was really little, that you should celebrate sort of everything that comes your way. If you're sad, if you're endlessly sad, if you feel like, you know, you can't even see, you know, 2 steps in front of you that are good for you, he would say celebrate it. You might not get this sad ever again. You know, you're talking to someone on the phone, you're talking to someone, you're speaking to someone in person, and if there's someone you care for, if it's someone you love, express it, tell it now, celebrate that love, celebrate that, you know, appreciation, because you might not see them ever again. And that's then again a very sort of like a dark thought, but at the same time it makes you think that, yeah, maybe, you know, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm down right now, this might be the last time I'm this down or this sad. Plus, if I sit and cry about it, oh, why am I so sad, why isn't this working out, that's not going to help me anyway. That's not going to help me to get out of it anyway. So it's best to let it happen. I think that's like the ultimate going with the flow guy. I think that's my granddad. Like, that's who he was. And
sounds like an amazing influence.
He is one of my biggest influences in life, as who I am as a person today. I think, because most people, I mean, kind of you told me in the beginning as well, is that, you know, I mean, I do also get my certain phases of like every 6 months thinking, oh, I was born in the wrong decade kind of thing. Like, cause I you know, I get that every 6 months. Like, I get a couple of days of it, because my taste in music, my taste in everyday things, my taste in, you know, say, for example, like my taste in fashion, my taste in conversation or topics of conversation or society, they're old-fashioned, if you will, but not the conceited old-fashioned. Like, you know,
you'd fit well with my crew. Let me tell you that, man.
Oh, we'll. Let's go out for a drink sometime.
Hell yeah, anytime.
That'll be great.
You know, one of the things that you mentioned that I had to touch upon as well is, you know, the advice that your grandfather gave you. That's what makes you feel alive. You know, it's, and I know what you mean. You know, I think you're right in trying to explain it, because some people might misunderstand you, but I didn't. You know, it celebrating the down times as well, because you're alive, you're feeling, you're
Exactly.
experiencing
Otherwise,
life.
you know, it's just boring. You know,
Exactly.
like happiness isn't happiness if there's no sadness attached to the other end, because I think then it's
Exactly.
just the normal. Then it's just like, oh, that's all I feel. Well, okay. So
You
you
go
don't know the
through
importance.
Exactly. You go through, you know, I'm not a huge military guy, but when I was younger, I didn't really understand the whole, like, why are they like demeaning these guys? And it's not about trying to prove, and women, I should say, it's not trying to say like, oh, you need to prove that you're tough, but it's breaking them down and then building them up so that they realize that they've fought for a
Sure.
reason. And so
Yeah.
anyway, I don't want to go too far down a military rabbit hole, but that was something that early on in my life I didn't really get, and then when it hit me, I think when I got to college, it just opened up a whole, you know, new group of doors for me. Just so I saw a note on one of your Instagram posts asking listeners to please listen to your album song by song in order, and I just want to say, man, I love that. Like, we've been talking about it already. You definitely seem more old school, Shan, and that's the reason I really dig talking to you. One of the many reasons. So
Thank you.
for the purpose of time, I don't think we'll be able to talk in incredible detail about all 18 of your songs, but I'm confident that this
Right.
podcast is going to encourage a lot of listeners to fulfill your request. So I did it. I actually followed Shan's advice.
Thank you so much, Greg.
And I want to talk about it in a minute. And I've got a story I want to share too that involves a third party. But Shan's right. It is a much better experience. So for you guys out there that are listening to this, that are going to hear some clips, I encourage you to go back afterwards and set aside some time, because it really is a journey. So, all right, getting into the album opens with Wound. And right away, Shan, your acoustic guitar grabs me right away.
Before you stab me again, wait for the wound to heal.
It was so much fun. I mean, but yeah, it's just so much fun. I'm sorry. I feel slightly overwhelmed, because I'm just so it just makes me so happy to know that you've liked it. You just, the way you're talking about it just makes me feel so
There's
so
so
happy.
much more. I mean, I want to get into Anna in a little bit, but I'm going to share. I want to share. I'm excited to share this story with you in a minute. Wound, the song Wound, really, and these are the feelings that I get. So whenever I write a review, or really anytime I'm listening to music, it helps me write so much. It's difficult for me to write in just dead silence. Although sometimes I do crave the dead silence, because living in a house with 2 young kids, it can get a little loud and rambunctious. But the song Wound, it really cuts the listener deep right out of the gate. And
no pun intended.
Shayan doesn't pull any punches here. This song, I feel it really sends a message to the listener to buckle up, for you're in store for a journey into your emotions, not only Shayan's emotions, but the listener's emotions, and a journey I think we all can relate to. I know that I can. I think that's why I enjoyed your record so much. So,
thank you so
some
much.
of your lyrics, say what you should, make it hard to, and I apologize, this was the only part I couldn't pick up. Say what you should, make it hard to what? Do you remember?
Make it hard to live.
Live, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to get used to the scars that you give. You never cared to look back. You just ran down your way. You know that I've never been too good at the way I hide my pain. And then later you end the song with, the wound will never heal. Like I was getting goosebumps, man, and I'm getting them now just reading these again. Some artists I've had on the podcast before noted their songs were fictional, meaning real feelings, but not necessarily based on a specific event or about one person. Is this the case with Wound, or was this about something specific that happened to you?
I think that's initially, the case with almost the whole record. Like I said, there's the feelings very much. I think Wound stems from, especially in the first verse, I think it stems from agitation. It stems from that, that initial. So the first time you realize in a relationship, if you will, like, let's get, hypothetical about it for a second. Yep. The first time you realize in a relationship that, you're forcing things to be together. They are falling apart, but you're pushing too much for them to be together. This is not organic anymore. This is not working itself out anymore the way it had been from that up until now, or the way it was, say, supposed to, or it is supposed to in relationships. And then, that with a specific touch of like, when things don't work out, you start, blaming, I guess. You get into like, this is not me, this is you. And that kind of produces this certain agitation with the way the song starts itself. I think the opening is like, do what you must. I'm blanking out, but like the thing you just mentioned, make it hard to live because I'm trying to get used to the scars that you give. Yeah. Say what you should is like, I'll take it, but give me room to breathe. Like, sure, I'm here till the long haul. I'm here with everything that this is giving me. And maybe it's, which, as you further progress into the album, this whole agitation is explained from the other end as to why I've been feeling this way, or I've been, like, say the other person explains why you think, if I'm the one who's hurting you, this is why, because you'd been hurting me for the longer time. Right. So I'm just trying to express that, and you're just not able to take it that way because you feel like, it's too attacking or this and that. And I think for Wound, it's kind of like, I'll take all of that, but, give me room to breathe. Like, before you stab me again, wait for the wound to heal. Right. Just like, it's kind of just breathe up. I'm here, I'll take it again. Sure, I'm used to it, or I'm trying to get used to it then again. But you just got to give me like an equal, like maybe just like a little bit of time in between for me to cope and for me to get like slightly be able to take it again, because I want to make this work. And if that means I have to take these, if you want to call them blows, I don't, because then again, it's not anything too specific or too pointed.
Sure.
So I don't want to term it specifically, but it's just those things, fair. I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I appreciate you sharing some of this. But you're right. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, a lot of times it's open for interpretation, right? But I still love to investigate. Now on track 2, the tempo picks up with "I Guess I Don't Love You."
let's go. Don't wanna miss your flight. Pack warmer clothes. Where you going? It gets cold at night. Don't forget your phone, 'cause you know sometimes you think it's in your bag. I see you up. It's not the same as letting go. It seems a lot like from now we'll just be on our own. If that's not enough, the tears you try to hide prove me right. And if it wasn't worth it, then what counts is the thought. No, we were never perfect. The timing's slightly off. Oh, maybe the clock's just broken. It's still not time for you to leave. And maybe you wake me up and it'll all be over. Just a bad dream. You know how I think too much about the things that don't matter the most. And if letting you go is love, then I guess I don't love you, I don't. I'll forget.
I think I can relate to this title. I related it to a personal experience where a love I had essentially told me she didn't love me anymore right to my face while we were on this huge trip on the other side of the planet. So for me to cope, I would tell myself each morning, I guess I don't love her. That was kind of my way to say, Greg,
a mechanism,
Greg, you can do this. Yeah, like, Greg, you can do this.
To get yourself through.
This. And we still had to spend, because we were over there for 10 days, I still had to spend the majority of my trip there with her. So
that's quite morbid, isn't it, though?
It's like pretty
that
awkward, man.
Initial rush of, it's very awkward. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, not to have you relive or any of that.
No. I'm so grateful that it happened. It taught me so much, but I'm really glad that I had the experience anyway. But that was really my way to say, like, Greg, you can do this. You can get over this. You never really loved this person, which, I was faking myself out. But so I think you sort of already answered my question, but I was just curious if there was somewhat of a relation there. Not that you had the same experience as me, but is I guess I don't love you kind of a way that you're telling yourself, like, no, I guess maybe I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to that feeling of, like, coping of through this whole thing. But initially, like in the fictional time, if I were to tell a tale, it's about two lovers being together and then one of them moving away, and then which is just, say, this person's way of telling the other person that hey. I just, for example, hey, I got a job in another country, so I'm gonna have to go, and I can't keep this up between. But at the same time, it's them telling the other person that, hey, I don't think what we have is working out. So it's like metaphorically talking about the relationship through this fictional cult of, like, a job in a different country. That's why the whole, like, the aesthetic of that song is, like, with, like, planes and, like, flights and stuff. And the very opening lyrics is kind of like, you said, let's go, don't want to miss your flight, is metaphorically talking about don't want to miss your flight, as in, like, you don't want to sit here at the same spot for me, and you want to fly out there and you want to go and expand, instead of, like, literally having to go and missing or taking a flight. So you don't want to miss your flight, as in you don't want to sort of give up on you want to move on from me. I guess I don't love you is really, like, so it's kind of like hoping this person is going, if letting you go is love, then I guess I don't love you. It's just it's that feeling. Then again, just coming off of wound, there's still that lingering agitation of, like, I want to make this work. I just so I'm doing what I can, including wound, like, I'm taking all these blows and all, and now you're still going, you're still leaving. And if that's love, if that's what love gets me, or if that's what love means, then that's not for me. That's not love. Then I don't love you. This is a fun fact about me for the listeners. I've only been in a single relationship my whole life, and I'm married to that woman now, and I'm just extremely, extremely, I think, grateful for life and things and the world, or anything and everything, really. So I think, those things are not pure fiction then again, because, I guess I don't love you the story itself, the sort of the metaphorical end of it, at least. A childhood friend of mine and I, it was a bar conversation that this song stemmed from, really, where he just kind of like, there's that moment with your friend where you're just like, you know what? I'll pay for your drinks. You just have to sit here and listen to this thing that I'm feeling for the next 2 hours. Right. I just want to sort of vomit it out, and I don't have anybody else. So, you can have as much beer as you want. I'll pay for it. Just sit here and listen to me. And I think that's where that song came from initially. Like, the thought of that song came from initially.
Well, it's going to be really hard to skip around a little bit, but stay with me. So, because the next track, Past Life, it's a beautiful soliloquy, and the listeners are just, they're going to be in for a special gift when you guys, you're going to remember being a part of that early group that can later tell people, I heard Shayan Regan's music before any of you guys. So there.
Once upon a time, twice in a row, 3 words we never had the urge to say before. We were kids back then, God, we didn't know if we'd go back to friends when it's over. I won't talk anymore, can't take it away. Now we have it all in this house that's filled with memories and our chosen colored walls. I'm all over the place, you don't say too much, and you're always there when my scars, they need a healer's touch. And I know I must have been good in a past life for the world to bring me to you. And as these words come out of my mouth, form on my tongue and roll their way out, yes, you're the one. And I know that I always know. They say life's a song, and you're my favorite line.
You've got a great video on YouTube, Shan, that you did for Trace's Portion of the Price, which I saw. And dude, this track is ridiculous. And I don't want my American slang to confuse you. I'm using the word ridiculous in the most flattering.
Oh no, trust me. Trust me. I've got I'm like I said, like I spent about, like, growing up, I spent about 6-7 years in Chicago, and I've got even after that now as well.
Okay, thank God.
Multiple, very, very much, like, so many American friends. So I know what that means.
Okay, all right. So you're into our ridiculous slang. My parents used to say, "Greg,
sure.
That's ridiculous," and they weren't complimenting me. It was like, "Greg, that's ridiculous."
Well, it's half and
okay,
half, isn't it?
I think it's a generational thing too, but it maybe started with maybe my generation, and thankfully it's stayed. So, talk to me about this track. I think you already mentioned that you have somebody else playing piano on that, right?
On Traces.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my childhood best friend, James Alston. I think we even wrote. Well, he's credited as songwriter as well, because we wrote the chorus. This song was initially we started today, and then it was completed 6 months after. We wrote the chorus to the song, and at his place, he told me he can play the piano, but he's never written a song. I was like, hey, I write songs. I love to write songs. Let's just write songs. And he's like, well, we can try and come up with something. And he started playing. So there's a very sort of like an Adele-like feel to that piano,
right?
Because of
I agree.
Because of the way it just plays.
Blame usually just to pay a portion of the price. Don't know if you're gone for good, but how would it help if I knew? For I was just jealous and you were just bad, laughable to be misconstrued. Feed our desires right from my teeth. Take what was yours, burn the bridges between. Yeah, I've been that liar, I've been that thief. I had to be them before I could be me. Worthless, I know, but it's true. It still lives in the things that I do. A part of me never got through. Sure, I'll tell a lie that I'll be just fine with traces of you.
That's where we went with it, and then we wrote that chorus, and then like months after I just hit him up, and then that was the time when we were in a lockdown, and
Right.
I said, hey, remember that thing we wrote? I want to finish it and stuff. And then I asked him to just like play over the thing, record it on anything, like maybe just a voice recorder, like the voice memos on your phone. I sounded like I'm from the 60s there, a voice recorder. Anyway, I just, he sends me that thing, and I just like wrote this whole thing out, and I said, now I want you to record the piano properly on this thing for me. And then he did, and then just traces came to happen, I think. So he played the whole thing on it. I just recorded and mixed the whole thing.
Now, last I checked, the song is already north of 30,000 streams on Spotify.
Thank you.
And
That just blows my mind.
Past Life. I looked about a week or two ago. It's well over 70,000 streams.
Yeah.
So
I feel so blessed. Honestly, because I don't really even when like I put the first ever song, like I put an EP out at first with just 4 songs, and it would say to me like, oh, it has crossed 1,000 streams, and I still sit in sort of like, because I'm not that guy, you know what I mean? Like I don't sit out and be like, okay, this song needs to be played a couple million times.
right.
I feel like the goal, if there ever was any, would have probably been like the amount of people I know in life listening to it at least once, which is well under like 100,
Right.
So it going where it has, for me, it's definitely just breathtaking, because I still don't feel like I want, people to be like, okay, let's stream this like a couple million times, etc., etc. I don't even think over there. Like I don't even go there. For me, it's therapeutic. For me, it's something that I've made, that I'm confident and satisfied enough to put out in the world, for it to exist up in the air. And from one corner of the world, if someone listens to it, and if they can find a moment, like 3 minutes of their time to listen and relate to it, I think that itself is the biggest achievement the song can get, or my music can get in general. And I think I just find it completely and honestly very, very much like enough. You know what I mean?
I agree, man. A Poison With An Aftertaste. It's an emotional ride. I sat down with my high quality headphones. My wife got me some nice headphones for my birthday a couple months ago, and I listened, like I said, all the way through. And by the time I got to Blood Runs, which was the 5th track, I'm staring out the window. At the time, there was snowfall covering the trees in my backyard, and I live in a part of New England where I'm not quite in the city. I'm just outside the city. So I'm staring out the window, looking at the snowfall. So it's an early snowfall, so it's still really nice to look at. The sun's beating down, causing a reflection off the glass windows of my tool shed, and birds are looking for food in this late winter storm. And I'm totally into this vision as I'm looking out my window. And Shayan, your music is providing the soundtrack to this.
You say speak and I spell. You say stop, I stay still. New lines I trace in your head. Rue proves that she's strong to undo what went wrong. I lie as you lie on my chest. Doesn't fit in your bag, it only just wrong. I bring all my daggers, but I use none. It's the secret I keep that keeps me up, to blame all the evil in my blood. I hold no mystery, it's what I say as you believe. I play my cards off the seat. See, I could swim or drown more. You pick your poison or your cure. And I could die, but I don't deserve that kind of peace. And I know that you know just what I mean. So at what point of flowing are you just humoring me? When I say that I'll do anything for you, well, that means that you know you could do anything to me.
And to add color to this album,
that's how I'm gonna explain the whole record to everyone from now on. Nice. The whole scenery is what I'm gonna use.
I got more
to tell people.
I got more for you too. And so to add some color to the album, track 9, which is titled Maybe, it's an exceptional twist, offering the listeners something a little different. Maybe is a duet, as we were talking about. Shayan records with singer Anna Bowen.
If you come any closer, then I'd ask you to stay. If you stay any longer, I wouldn't want you to leave. I keep finding myself craving your company, 'cause I'm caught in your trap when you hold me.
Not that I don't wanna be right next to you, babe. We've come too far to go back there again. And wasn't it you who told me it's what we do to each other that said our words are poison with an aftertaste? Well, maybe this might sound crazy, but maybe you've been feeling the same way. I'll take the good and the bad, green and red flags, it's what I do. Hoping we don't break it, just maybe.
All it takes is a look for me to melt in your.
Am I pronouncing her last name right? Bowen?
I think it's Bowden, yeah.
Okay, all right. So
It's with the D.
I have a bunch of questions about
I could be
Anna.
saying it wrong myself as well, Anna. If you're hearing this, I apologize.
Anna, well, this is going to be nothing but props for Anna. I was looking her up, and does she contribute to other tracks on the album? I think you had alluded to that earlier.
Not Anna. No, with Anna, I just wrote maybe. She'd listened to a couple, but like, it's funny because I met Anna over the internet as well, and this is the first song we wrote together, and it just came back. Speaking of BandLab, that's where I met her. You know, like going back to that's where I met Anna, and I just listened to her stuff, and she's an incredible songwriter, and she's got the most beautiful voice, and Initially, I just, you know, I just straight up told her, I said, we need to write something together. Like, we need to do something together. And then, you know, cut to Maybe happens. And I think for me, just because of the way it came about and what it's about, and, you know, now on the deluxe edition, there's a part 2 to it. It's like, there's sort of like a sequel to it, which is something I've always wanted to do with the song. And I'm so glad I was able to do it with Maybe. It's one of my favorites, my personal favorites on the album.
It's my personal favorite. And that, I think that says a lot, because it took me a while. I was like, I want to pick out a favorite. And yeah, again, I'm not always like, oh, I have to pick. My kids are always like, Dad, what's your favorite, you know, whatever. What's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite? And I'm always answering them like, well, you know, it depends on my mood, or it depends on my, so, you know, it's not always black and white. After like the 5th listen, I said, this has got to be my favorite. So that's the song that when I'm with some of my friends and I know that I only have like 3 minutes, because we're all just, everyone's got ADD. I feel like I'm like, all right, what's going to grab somebody really quickly? But this track, Maybe, it's gut punching. And Shayan, I use those words in the most passionate way. It causes me to stop everything I'm doing when I listen. I can't multitask. The format
Me
in
neither.
which, the format in which she starts off singing the first verse alone, and then you come in about 30 to 45 seconds later, then you both sing together, harmonizing. So I'm in a, not long ago, about a month ago, I'm in a car with a friend of mine. We were driving. We had made a pact that we were going to take a day off and we were just going to hang out. A lot of
As
times,
you should.
Right. It's rare. And,
That's very important.
My kids were at school. It was a weekday. My kids were at school. His kids were at school. My wife was at work, and we were just hanging out. And a lot of times when I get together with my friends, we have this weird contest where we want to upstage the other one with a song that they've never heard before.
Oh.
So
it'll
be like,
it's that, you know, my taste is superior kind of conflict. I have it too.
Well, no, it's kind of more like I had this incredible experience and you have to experience it too. So
oh no, mine's pure pettiness. I'm better than you.
I love it.
Mine's
I
just
love it.
Look at me.
We're driving in my car and we go get what we needed to get, and we get back to my house and he's playing something on his iPhone, and I quickly grab the cord, plug it into the bottom of my phone, and I'm like, give me 3 seconds, give me a minute or two here. I want to play you something, and I'm actually going to be talking to this guy in a couple weeks. And I put on Maybe. And then I started looking at him, and he was looking out his side of the window, you know, car window, and then looking back. And when the song was over, he kind of turned a little pale. And my reaction, Shayan, is to start laughing, because I like to shock people with music. And I remember the first time I heard Jimi Hendrix, the first time I heard Pink Floyd, my reaction was like, I think
no one, everyone in the world, whoever has ever listened to anything Pink Floyd, was shocked. And I don't think that I can't find anyone. I don't know if there's any person in the whole world who listens to Pink Floyd for the first time and does not go, wow, like wow, just completely speechless.
We need to do another podcast on that, because they have been for probably
have me as a regular.
Years.
Don't worry about it.
They've been my number one for probably about 30 years. And in fact, they released a new song today about Ukraine. And
they did.
Yes. And
did not know that.
I've got to get to that in another podcast episode. But yes, I'm extremely excited. So, but I use Pink Floyd because it's one of the bands that, you know, I have like an exclusive club of friends with, and you're either kind of in or you're out. And when I played my friend Maybe, he just was speechless for a minute. And I'm telling you the God honest truth, man. And that's why I had to share this with you, because it doesn't
Thank you so
happen
much.
that
You don't know
often.
how much I appreciate it.
Well,
that makes me feel just so amazing.
I almost messaged you right away after that. Anyway, I had to share that experience with you. And now
thank you so much for sharing.
Now he's
it with
asking me your name again. He said, what was that? What was that again? So I I feel very rewarded, but you should feel rewarded as well, man. So
I feel amazing. This makes me feel so, I don't know, like I don't know how to explain this feeling, which like, you know, my closest friends would know about this, because when I feel very nice about something, I term it being warm. I just feel warm about it. I don't know how to explain it. Just, yeah, you know, there's this warm feeling, and that's exactly what I feel right now. Because it just, like I said, yeah, that's because it's because then again, it's not about, you know, how many people listen to these things. It's about like whoever listens to it and how they listen to it, if that makes sense, like how they feel about it, or what it makes, you know, if it makes a spot in their head and heart about things that the song's talking about. And I think that's just incredible. Yeah. I'm very, very, very glad that you told me that.
Oh man, I had to. Yeah. So Scene of the Crime originally closed out your first release of A Poison With An Aftertaste, the kind of the standard release. And in Shayan's new bonus version, which he released on March 11th this year, contains 8 additional songs, right?
Yep.
So Scene of the Crime appropriately closes out the original version in a manner which, again, we talked about it earlier. You could say maybe this was a somewhat of a concept album. At least I thought that. And I have sort of shared that with some of my friends.
Yeah, with an attention disorder, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I say that too is because you close that song with the words, "'Cause it didn't heal my wound," which harkens back to the first track on the album, appropriately titled "Wound," which it had to have been intentional.
Tragic about this. I could burst this bubble, but I don't mind, 'cause there's something magic about this. You just wait till I fall. Is that it, my friend? Well then, take a taste, not a bite out of life. Oh, where do you go to pretend?
Oh yeah, there's it's a trilogy. It's there's Wound, there's Blood Runs, and there's Scene of Crime. Those are the pillars of this record. The rest of the album fills in the spots that are left empty.
Right.
In those 3 songs. It starts off with Wound, and I mean, you know, then again, in a very weird true crime series way, it also connects the titles, whereas there's a wound and then the blood runs and then that turns into a scene of crime. All of that, you know, in terms of feelings and emotions, not literally a wound and blood and scene of crime, because that could get a little bit ghastly and not necessarily something to write songs about, let alone an album.
Right.
And and I think so. Yeah, it's a trilogy, because even in Blood Runs, it mentions both of the songs. I think it's the second verse where it goes, lying here as I breathe, with wounds on each side. Nobody's fault, my scene, my crime. That's a lyric in Blood Runs, which, you know, sort of direct references the 2 songs. And overall, the whole album, necessarily you'll find, you know, tiny subtle connections or maybe very direct references to each other, like, you know, each other, like all these tracks. And those are the pillars of the record, the track 1, 5, and 10. And the rest of the album just fills in the spots that are left sort of open, the wounds that are left open, no pun intended, in those songs. So yeah, now, it's definitely intentional.
Now Flowers comes right at you with a beautiful piano, again causing me to envision this this is what I was seeing, this picturesque sunset over a quiet lake. We've got some really, really cool, pretty lakes up here in New England. And like every track on this album, Shan sings his guts out on this one. The echo on your vocals and the passion in your residence, the passion in your resonance, not your residence. Although you might have passion in your residence, but
you gotta have to, innit? Like otherwise, it's just a little boring around.
it makes me, the passion makes me again staring out my window, forgetting everything I was planning to do that moment except just listen.
Joke's not funny, the truth's not true, but know that it's nothing, that all of this has to do with you. Get a grip of all this, they can hear when we fight. That's enough, now there's blood everywhere, honey. Put down the knife. I know you like my own reflection, and you know that too. You can claim all the change that you want, but darling, I haven't moved.
So you've contributed to my ADD. Thanks a lot, Shan. I really appreciate it.
There you go. It's okay. Always, man. You can always count on me.
I think it's rare these days that people just sit and listen to music anymore, at least in a mass amount of people, at least in my circles. You know, music like many things is kind of, you know, quote unquote in the background.
It's become a sideline. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
It's a sideline thing, man.
I haven't been to a bunch of listening parties lately where the room is quiet and everyone's eyes are closed.
Saying, but don't shout it out. Promise I'm listening. For it's rain that grows the flowers and thunder scares them.
I was telling you about my story earlier,
to be
right?
in the center of that room. That's got to be, that's one of the best feelings. I personally try and take time out of my week to do that, because that's a complete feeling. And like I say a complete feeling, what I mean is like there's everything in there, you know, because a record, even if it's a sad album, it still has everything in there, because it's going to talk about happiness the way it used to be, but it's still talking about happiness, and then it's talking about sadness the way it is. So there's sadness, and it's talking about agony the way it will be, regret the way it will be, or, you know, sorrow the way it will be. I mean, then again, I'm just referencing to basically any Joni Mitchell record, but, you know, it's kind of like, it's a complete feeling, and I think it's a great thing to still do. And people who do it, I really appreciate it. And, you know, not to be self-centered and be like, you know, people who do it with just my music, people who just do it with music is, I think, one of the most complete things to do in life. So I really appreciate it.
For the listeners out there, if you've ever been part of something like this, even for a moment, it's special. Shan's right. You know, it's so special. It was really a lot of experiences that I had in high school and college, and I'm sad to admit that it's not as much anymore as I've, you know, gotten out of school and tried my best to attempt at becoming an adult. It's moments like those that I really, Shan, rank up there with the greatest
I love how you put that.
of my life.
I'm sorry, I had to just point at it. I absolutely loved how you put that, because everyone's just giving. It's a lousy attempt. Everyone's just trying. Everyone's figuring it out. You know, it's great to admit it, and I love that you do.
I try to tell my kids that sometimes to not scare them, but it's the truth, you know.
Oh yeah.
When I go back to these listening parties, you get to pause and feel what the artist was putting out there. But again, as we've been talking, A lot of times it's really more your own interpretation and you get to form your own feelings. Shayan just goes all out on his vocals during Flowers. And, you know, we talked about how he put that song together. Other bonus tracks on this album include Favorite Line, Homemade Paris, and a sequel to Maybe titled Maybe Part 2. So I did skip ahead a little bit before I went back and listened to some of the other ones my second time and listened to that. And Shayan incorporates some really cool sound effects in both Part 1 and 2 of Maybe, including the echoes of text messaging, which I really liked, and writing on paper as well. I kind of described the link between the songs and these sounds as a metaphor for how we communicated with people back in the day. Fast forwarding to today, you know, we used to write. I used to write, this might sound weird, but I mean, like, I used to write people letters. Like, I'd have friends and I would write them letters.
I still write people letters.
Do you? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
Love
how,
writing letters.
besides the phone, that was, you know, really a lot of how I communicated. And Part 2 shares much of the same lyrics with Part 1, but kind of in a different tempo, adding multiple instruments. Again, in many of these songs, Shayan reintroduces lyrics he wrote for earlier songs and then just carefully places them into some of the tracks on his bonus release, which I find really cool, man. Really cool.
Thank you.
So I wanted to call out I Could Use a Friend out of one of the bonus tracks. This was one of my favorites as well. The acoustic guitar starts off so innocent, and I was extremely motivated when I heard it to write my thoughts on a page while listening to this. And it just evokes, like I was saying earlier, like contemplating, you know, things that I need to do in my life.
Since we talked, been busy lately, we just knock it off. No truth in that at all. Just easy to believe you're caught up instead of gone. Thought you'd make it right. At least that is what I hoped for. As time passes by, I hate knowing I missed it all. Do you see me from where you are? Are you happy looking down? Or do you just forget it once you're buried beneath the ground? I wish somebody could tell me, be nice knowing you're still around. 'Cause I could use a friend, for it's getting harder now.
And it wasn't negative contemplation or like, hey, I'm behind on this. It was just really, it enabled me to be
thinning out things that are happening. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So for some faster upbeat tracks, if some of you guys are looking for that, Homemade Paris and the song End Scene, BZ's song, I think they satisfy that upbeat itch if people have that. If you're trying to turn a large group of people onto Shayan's music, I don't know, perhaps maybe some may be more inclined to respond to the faster paced rhythms. I mean, it depends on one's taste or the environment that they're in. For me, both kind of slow and fast paced can really make an impact. It just depends on my mood. But I must admit, you know, I've got to point out that tracks like Maybe or Blood Runs, they go right for the jugular, man. And
thank you.
If you get excited about shocking people, like I've been saying, playing great music or a great song when they're least expecting it, I tend to go for some of these songs that just evoke deep emotions, and a lot of times they're typically a bit slower paced.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, the bonus version of A Poison With An Aftertaste closes with what Shayan titles as the wedding version of Past Life. So, I think you went into this a little bit, man, but I popped this question here and we're not too far from wrapping up here. Wondering if you might be able to break down maybe if there were any differences between those two versions.
Oh, it's a remix with sort of like an orchestral setting. A great friend of mine who I met over the internet, named Tyler Rich. He's an amazing artist and producer who that version I wanted to make. So Past Life initially is, you know, you could call it just a love letter to my life with my wife. like so far or whatever it has been, because we've been in a relationship for, it'll be 9 years. Wow. And awesome. Later this year. And it's a child. Thank you so much. It's a childhood love kind of thing. So it's like, there's the whole notion of, oh, too young. And then now, after around the time we were getting, about to get married, it was the whole notion, because societal norms of like, oh, you're too early, too young, this, that, which we just tackled with, if we want to do it, then we want to do it. And, we'll face what comes. And I think it's just kind of like a written out letter to the whole experience that I've had the ultimate honor to have with my wife. And the wedding version just came about, like, I just went to Tyler and I said, I just got married. I want this song to be sort of wedding-esque now. Yeah. And so he just went on with his beautiful string arrangements and like making it sort of that dreamy, heavenly, wedding-esque vibe onto the same song. So it's just basically his remix as a wedding version.
That's awesome.
Initially, the record, like story-wise, in the deluxe edition ends on Fridge Notes, because that's the thing you mentioned with like being written on paper, and in the beginning of Maybe, that's the Fridge Note being written. That's the track after Maybe.
Right. In terms of your music, any plans for the future?
I'm a very private person outside of this music, because I write these songs and I get myself thinking I've said too much or I've exposed too much, even though it could be something like that totally goes over people's heads in terms of that. Not to say, that people don't understand stuff, they really do. It's just that I sometimes feel like it's too bearing, if that makes sense. Like it's too naked, because you might have written a song sometimes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's just like, am I saying too much? Am I admitting to too much? Am I just, it's kind of like a serial killer trying to write a song. Like, is this going to incriminate me?
Hey, if it makes you feel any better, I think 100% of the independent musicians, artists that I've interviewed on this podcast have said almost the exact same thing. Now, are you guys planning on staying in Florence for a while?
Oh, yes. We are looking into opening up a florist's, because we just absolutely would love to have a flower shop.
Nice.
That's got nothing really, that's just been a all-time thing of mine. Like, nice. Because then again, not technically going like, oh, I just, like I said, like I'm not the guy to like, oh, let's just the music's gotta sell, the music's gotta go big, it's gotta be the next big thing. It's gotta be relatable, it's gotta be organic. I think that's my main notion of creating music or writing songs, is that as long as it sort of sits in the room with you and talks to you as your friend, or as an advisor, or as someone who just knows you by the street, and right. He just comes in for a chat, talks to you, or just like I said, like a guy sitting in the living room singing songs, that's enough for me with the music. And like, after that, there's bonus content, whatever comes my way. So I'd say, in terms of like a job or in terms of work, I've always wanted to have a flower shop. I feel myself completely around flowers, if that makes it. That's the most childish thing I've said today. But
that's awesome. What else are you guys doing these days to keep busy besides sort of planning,
We currently work. I work. I work with a potter. I do pottery sometimes. Oh, nice. And I work at a cafe, and so does my wife. And it's getting by now and then. Nice. Just how it is, taking one day at a time, I guess.
And you got your music, and you've got this exciting ride that your album is slowly starting to take you on, if it hasn't already. And I think there's more to come, man. As we're starting to wrap up here, I always like to ask this question, Shayan. What inspires you, man?
That's a really good question. And that can, if we've been talking for 2 hours, I can go on for 2 more with that. I think people, I think just the notion, the notion of, there's that whole scope of like, things are bad, things are good, things are okay, things are messy, there's this, there's that in everyone's life.
Yeah.
And then there's that moment in everyone's life in every day where, you know, you rest your head on a pillow and you finally admit to the fact that, you know, tomorrow's another day. Yeah. You know, the wind's going to change. There's a slight, and that could be as minuscule as a grain of salt, I guess, but it always exists in people, that notion of there's another day, you know, we get another chance at this. And I find that in life the most inspirational thing to see and to experience myself and other people, or just, you know. And then there's the whole thing with like how people tend to these things, how people tend to people. And sure, there's a lot of negativity around, especially now. Sure, there's a whole chunk of like bad stuff in the world, but at the same time, there's that notion of, you know, yeah, all of this is going down, but we've pulled through before. We'll pull through this time as well. We always make, you know, it to the next sort of pedestal. Like we take the leap every single time, and we land, no matter how far it is or how long it takes or how tough it can get. And I think in terms of like just us as humanity as a whole, I think that's one of the most inspirational things. But as soon as you close your eyes and you wake up on a brand new day, you sort of hit reset on your time. People who push through, people who go with that, I think, are the most inspirational people in life that you meet.
I'm always fascinated when I talk to musicians, artists like yourself, and just how, I'm trying to think of another word for inspiring, but I can't right now, but just how inspiring it is. I have to say, part of why I also do this is not just to help artists get their music out there, but there's a selfish tone to it too. This is kind of like therapy for me as well. And just to, you know,
and that's not selfish. No, that's completely human. I think that's actually the healthiest thing, that the healthiest angle you can take from this, because for me to get to talk about these things, or for you to talk about, you know, like, say, you didn't wake up today thinking you were going to talk to me about the story about, you know, you going to listening parties in high school. Like, that just came about, you know what I mean? Yeah, and I think, so those things really, for me especially, make it worth it, if that makes sense. Like, because those chance situations of, you know, us having a chat and then just going a deeper end of something else that wasn't necessarily planned, and those tiny things, I think, you know, like you said, can't find another word for inspiring, but that is very inspiring, just the tiny things in your everyday life that happen, because they stick along a little longer than, you know, like a monumental change in your life. They do. You know, like you say something to me today that's going to stick. Like, I'm telling my kids about it one day. You know, there's this guy, Greg, over in America, lives in Boston. He told me this thing one time, great friend of mine. Now he knows, or she knows it too. And, you know, they talk to their friend, it's a notion that sticks. And I think, you know, that's the most human of things. So
well said, man. Do you have any announcements at all, or anything additional in regards to your album, just in terms of like, or your music, just in terms of more releases or shows or anything like that?
There's nothing set, nothing set in stone at the moment, because with, you know, life being the way it is right now, my focus is diverted. I'm definitely looking into making stuff, but at the same time, it's like not actively making stuff. Sure. But if there's anything like if there's a sort of like, not an announcement, if there's something I'd like to say is just to sort of like reassure whoever listens to this, if there are certain things in the world or in your life that seem like they're stuck, there's always time. Like, that's all you need to know in the end of the day. Like, that's what it boils down to. I think there's always good happening, even if it's the tiniest amount, it's still happening. All you've got to do is focus on that for you to ease your mind. And I think easing your mind is one of the biggest things to do, at least today, or in the times we're in.
Yeah, well said, man. Well, Shayan, thanks again, man, for joining me here today and giving us a glimpse, you know, giving us all a glimpse into your life and your music. And again, a little bit of plugging. Our listeners can pick up a copy of your album that's already out, A Poison With An Aftertaste, by going to bandcamp.com, or you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, really anywhere where you can access music. Is that right? Anywhere else?
Yeah, pretty much wherever they listen to the music. Thank you so much for having me today. This really, really makes me feel amazing on everything, like musically. But then again, I do want to, especially just say this out loud so that we both know about it. That this makes me feel so comfortable. This makes me feel so heard, if you will, and at the same time, this makes me feel so easy about talking about this stuff and everything else. Music and life and stuff, like, you know, even the stuff we talk about off the record and everything like that, just so comfortable, so easy, just so flowing. I love it.
I'm so glad to hear that. That was the intention. I listen to a lot of music, man, and I listen to it in somewhat of a different way now, where I get, you know, a lot of people coming to me and saying, hey, listen to this, listen to that, listen to this. Your stuff is truly special.
Thank you so much, Greg.
I just want to, you know, I want to share that with you. I've been writing music since 1989, and your songwriting is just, I haven't had too many conversations with people who have your talent, and there's been
Thank you so much.
There's been a few on this podcast, but I'm just glad to be, you know, a part of this. It's really been therapy for me as well. So, but if you have anything else to add,
yeah, I guess I just wanna like finish off by just basically, like I said, like saying it to everyone to just, you know, if things don't make sense, kind of give it time, you know. Because that's the biggest struggle these days with people in general.
Yeah.
Mental health is one of the, if not the most important part that's neglected
100%.
Continuously, you know. And I think those things take one of the biggest tolls in life. And I think, you know, on the other end of the line, it's if it's someone you see, if it's someone you know, if it's someone you feel like is having a tough time, it's not that hard to just, you know, take a step and reach out. You know, it's always, you know, kindness is key to all these things. Like, you just gotta grab, like, even if it means, like, you know, shaking someone by the shoulders, be like, hey, talk to me about this. Like, you can do that to friends. It's completely fine, you know. Yeah. Like, if sometimes that slight push is needed in someone's life. So I guess, you know, it's just an advice to, you know, kind of do good things, be nice. Sorry to go this route. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I, like, you know, even the song I Could Use a Friend, in lockdown, I lost 3 of my friends, 2 of them to suicide, because of this whole, you know, setback and this emotional influx of, you know, all of your life and everything else, and to have all of these things drive you to a point where you know, you somehow deem it fit to just could have sort of end it, I think, you know. And sort of the guilt creeps in, man. The regret just kind of comes creeping in, where you're like, maybe you could have at least been there. Maybe that could have made a slight, like, a difference. If not completely avoided it, maybe it would have delayed it. Maybe they'd have more time. There's all of these things, you know. You get to a darker conversation with yourself, and the first time ever I had to experience that, and it had been absolutely gutting for me. And I think so that sort of ignited it a little bit more in me as well. The notion of, like, you know, if they're not talking to you, make them talk to you. It's completely fine. Like, it's okay for them to talk to you. It's okay for you to reach out and just talk to them and be like, hey, like, I don't just say it for the sake of saying it, that I'm here. I am here, and that if you want to talk to me, you can completely talk to me. And it's not about judgment. It's not about character. It's not about time. It's not about efforts. It's about the conversation. It's about the emotion. It's about you letting it out and me keeping it together. I think everyone needs to be able to, you know, have someone like that in life.
Words of wisdom. We can't do anything on our own, and that's why we're here on this earth,
for sure,
to connect with other people. So thanks again, man. It's been awesome having you, and let's do this again.
Thank you so much for having me. I would, you know, start another podcast on the side and have me as a regular. I'd love to be.
Awesome. Thank you again for listening to the AlbumReview.net podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and remember, if you're interested in any of the albums I've discussed in this episode or previous episodes, go to AlbumReview.net and pick up a copy of your own. Listen to all my podcast album reviews at AlbumReview.net by clicking on the podcast tab. They can also be heard wherever podcasts are available. I'm saying the word podcast again a lot. Please follow the show on your preferred platform so you can get regular updates on new episodes. Also, if you guys would be so kind as to pop a quick review or rate the podcast, that helps move the needle and get the word out there. I do want to hear from you guys, all of you, so please email me your feedback, album review requests, and any questions you may have to gpotters@albumreview.net. That's GPOTTERS@albumreview.net. Stay tuned for updates on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me at @albumreviewnet. Join the mailing list, which is on the homepage of the website, or just keep refreshing your podcast. Just read and listen. All right, thanks again, guys. Keep listening to music, keep reading about music, and keep learning about the music you know and don't know anything about. It will set you free. Until we meet again.
Take a trip down by the highway. Take a trip down by the highway. Take a trip down by the highway. Take a trip down by